Welcome to Holly Madison's Memoir. Viewer discretion is advised due to the contents in the book. We're going to pick up where we last left off. In an attempt to further drive their point home, they had all gone out to the Santa Monica Pier together and had a group caricature done for Hef as a gift. Knock, knock! One of the girls squealed loudly through the master bedroom door. Hef and I were sitting in bed, eating dinner and watching the news, as we usually did on weeknights, when the mean girls came in to present him with the gift. As he fawned and cooed over the picture, I noticed the girls exchange a few sly glances and smirks. It was as if they were saying, "See how great we all look without Holly and Bridget." If Bridget or I had chosen to get a gift for Hef without including the other girlfriends, we would have been reprimanded for not including everyone. Yet no one, Hef included, acknowledged my presence in the room or my glaring omission from the drawing. It was as if I were a ghost. What Daphne and Diana didn't realize is that they'd never be able to push Bridget and me out as long as they were still aligned with Elizabeth and Whitney. Shrill Elizabeth and pushy Whitney were never Hef's cup of tea. I heard he turned each of them down the first time they had asked to move in, but eventually he kept them around as filler so he could reach the 7 girlfriends quota that had become his trademark. Over the previous year or so, since his girlfriends hadn't been gracing the pages of the magazines as often as they once did, the number of girls clamoring to be included in his party posse had understandably subsided. Whitney had always been Hef's least favorite, in part because she came into the group under some unsavory circumstances. Hef, do you think Whitney could start getting an allowance? Tina had asked, despite having left the mansion months earlier. Tina still trotted around from time to time to see what she could squeeze out of Hef. She works really hard to get all dressed up for you and to come to all the events. She'd make a really great girlfriend. At the time, Whitney was good enough to join him in the bedroom, but he wasn't too keen on asking her to move in. Tina had clearly been recruited to go to bat for her. Actually, Tina, I'm hoping that with this next set of girls, expectations won't be so high, Hef explained to his former girlfriend. Do you know I spent $2 million just on girlfriends and trips in the past few years? Most of that went towards the private planes he chartered, sometimes on the company tab, and the trips he took his girlfriends on, including a lavish European tour before I had arrived. She's putting in all this time and all she's getting out of it is a drink and a fuck, Tina said, clearly frustrated that she wasn't getting her way. Like I said, this girl was a hustler. God, I thought, I could never get away with talking to Hef like that. The room got very silent as Hef sat, staring at Tina. I like to think of this as all of their dreams coming true, he said very solemnly. Even Tina was struck silent by how serious he was. Did he really mean what he was saying? It sounded so conceited to assume that simply being in his presence or bedroom was a dream come true for these women. The hurt expression he held on his face forced Tina to abort her mission. Okay, sorry, Tina offered, and leaned over to give him a peck on the mouth. As she walked out the door, she called out a thoughtless, "Love you." For months, Hef continued to reject Whitney's pleas to become a girlfriend, but eventually her persistence paid off, and one day she moved into the mansion. We quickly discovered she was a pathological liar. And it was actually pretty amusing. Her age, former professions, and life story changed daily. "Darling," Hef asked, appearing in my dressing area one afternoon. "Yes?" I asked, pulling my nose out of my French homework. "I need to talk to you about something," he said, his brows furrowed, and pulled up my vanity stool. His somber eyes connected with mine. "Did you drug Whitney's drink last night?" "No!" I exclaimed through a fit of laughter. "Are you serious? Did she really say that?" The night before, we'd gone to the Saddle Ranch on Sunset Boulevard for dinner. Whitney had quite a few cocktails and decided to ride the mechanical bull. While no one really thought twice about it, she was apparently mortified by the decision and desperately searched for a reason to excuse her behavior. "Yes," he said. "She feels silly about last night and says she would never have done it normally and believes you and Bridget drugged her drink." The smile disappeared off my face as I realized that he was taking her insane accusations seriously. Bridget and I were so square, we wouldn't even have known how to get drugs, let alone be tricky enough to slip them into someone's drink unnoticed, in front of a whole table full of enemies, no less. I made this immediately clear to Hef. "Come on, Whitney," I thought. "At least go for something somewhat believable." "That's what I figured," Hef said, a smile slowly cracking on his face. "But I just had to be fair and ask." Phew. Luckily for me, it was Whitney making the allegations. I don't think things would have gone so smoothly if his beloved Diana or Daphne had made the claims. Why can't Hef see how awful they are, I wondered. I started questioning who would last the longest, me or the mean girls. I wasn't sure how much more of the absurdity I could take. After more than 2.5 years at the mansion, I felt no more sure-footed than I had on the day I arrived. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying not to set off a landmine of drama each day. At the time, I had no idea that their days were numbered, but I wouldn't be the one who took them out. It would take someone else to get rid of them. Someone a bit more Hef's type than I was. Someone younger, blonder, and much, much ditzier. Chapter 7. Alice felt so desperate that she was ready to ask help of anyone, and that is from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. It was April 2004, and the air had grown stale at the mansion. Bridget and I were constantly at odds with the other girlfriends. I could sense that even Hef felt he was ready for a change. It was only a matter of time before Hef started spring cleaning and invited in a new girlfriend. And just who would it be? Please be someone nice, I prayed. As you imagine, Hef is both meticulous and exceptionally picky when it comes to his women, girlfriends, playmates, etc. He has a picture of every girl that's ever come to the mansion, mostly Polaroids. If you were visiting the compound for the first time, a designated staffer would snap a photo of you before you entered the party, as they did to me years earlier. And those Polaroids were compiled for Hef to review the next day. He would label them A, B, or C, based primarily on their looks, but also how scantily clad they were, before having them cataloged in his social secretary's office. The A category was the most elite, meaning those girls were allowed to be invited back for all events or perhaps even a playmate test or an evening out with Hef. The B category was reserved for girls Hef would be comfortable inviting back for larger mansion parties, like Midsummer Night's Dream, as well as some of the smaller Fun in the Sun pool parties. The C category was a label bestowed on girls that were to be invited back only if they were absolutely desperate for more warm bodies. Whether it's for his scrapbooks, his parties, or his magazines, Hef is obsessive about photos. When I lived there, he still reviewed most of the magazine submissions himself and always gave his final sign-off on an issue. He also felt it necessary to see pictures of every model that would be working one of his parties. Inside his room, there was a calendar of upcoming events, and next to it was a wooden box. Inside the box were photos of playmates and potential playmates attached to a note card with the girls' information printed on it. This was a distinctive pile because these were the girls Hef was considering inviting out for a night. Occasionally, there would be a pile in front of the box with photos of girls that had attended a mansion party or girls that had submitted photos to the magazine and weren't being considered as playmates, but were still cute enough for Hef to consider taking out. For so long, this box was my nemesis, as I dreaded possible new additions to the harem. This time, however, I was determined to finally use the box to my advantage. Bridget and I were beyond tired of the mean girls, but we knew Hef wouldn't be content with just the two of us. We just got along too well for his taste. How could Mr. Drama King feel fought over, coveted, or interesting if his girlfriends actually got along? I knew Hef felt he needed to be seen with a gaggle of women in order to keep up his macho playboy image. And since he viewed Bridget and me as virtually the same person, I knew a new girlfriend would have to move in order for us to have a chance at getting rid of the others. The mean girls had already checked out, mentally. Daphne, Diana, and Elizabeth had been at the mansion for more than 2 years, and by this point probably assumed they'd never be offered a pictorial. They each began focusing more on their lives outside the gates, aka other boyfriends in some cases. So it was only a matter of time before they moved out or Hef asked them to leave. But even that wasn't enough. Bridget and I knew that if we wanted any sort of influence in kicking these girls to the curb and figuring out who their replacements would be, we'd have to act quickly. A few days before Hef's 78th birthday party, I noticed 3 pictures stacked in front of the wooden box in Hef's closet. I grabbed the photos and info sheets to scope out our options. Tiffany, Nicole, and Kendra. Apparently the girls were auditioning to be painted ladies at the party, and the body paint artist had submitted the images to the mansion for approval. The photos eventually made their way to Hef's private consideration pile, which meant he would definitely be keeping his eye out for them at the party. The day of Hef's soiree, Bridget and I went downstairs to the gym to meet the painted ladies as they got ready. It took most of the day for these girls to get covered head to toe in body paint. All 3 girls seemed nice enough, but Bridget and I decided that Tiffany was our favorite. I mean, of course. The name alone, duh. She was easy to talk to and seemed really smart. Plus, she had a knockout smile, long ash blonde curls, and a gorgeous, naturally curvy body. Well, thank you, Holly. I think I do too. It's just jokes, folks. More than hot enough to be Hef's girlfriend, but a refreshing change from the bleached blonde fembot look. Unbeknownst to us at the time, Hef had also made a pilgrimage down to the gym to check out the prospects and made a beeline toward Kendra Wilkinson, the most platinum and plastic of the bunch. Okay, so since Kendra's finally being mentioned, I think that this is a good time to share with you all. And I don't mean to disappoint anybody when I say this. I don't want to upset anybody, but this is just my feelings, okay? But Kendra is actually my least favorite out of the 3 of them. Don't get me wrong, though. I think that she is drop-dead gorgeous. A very beautiful woman, by all means. But her personality just isn't for me, I guess. So I'm sorry if you're a Kendra fan and you love her the most, but she's just not my cup of tea. But that's okay. She's, not everybody is everybody's cup of tea. And thankfully, there was 3 girlfriends, so you could choose from whichever one you liked the most. And for me, it was Bridget, okay? It's Bridget. But let's get back to the book. Preparing for a mansion party took an entire day. The large parties were the highlights of mansion life, so the girlfriends were expected to look flawless. Couple that expectation with the fact that we girls had a lot of time on our hands, and you get marathon beauty days. All of the girls started their day visiting the salon to spend hours on an elaborate hairdo. That year, I had purple streaks clipped into my long blonde extensions. Costumes were customized down to the tiniest detail, and diets were strictly observed in the weeks before a big party. I was so critical on my appearance, particularly my weight. A girl could rarely be too skinny at the mansion. After all, there were expectations that we became the Playboy fantasy everyone expected us to be. And in order to be that woman, it was essential that we looked the part. Plagued by self-doubt, I was constantly troubled by an imaginary belly and would often add a single garter to my costumes to hide a tiny dot on the back of my leg. God forbid someone might think I had cellulite. These days, I look back at photos from my mansion days and marvel how a girl that skinny could ever think she was fat. But I suppose I was a product of my environment. After spending much of my adulthood as nothing more than a trophy girlfriend whose sole occupation was to look good, I guess I can't really blame myself. And you can't, because considering what the standard was there, I couldn't imagine not being hard on myself and tearing myself apart and my appearance apart, especially when you keep seeing girls that are younger and more flawless or beautiful than you are as you get older. Like, I know I would struggle. I would not be cut for this life whatsoever. On the night of Hef's 78th birthday party, we made our entrance into the Great Hall around 9 o'clock. Hef's photographer, Elaine, snapped our obligatory photos. As was customary, Mark Frazier, the body painter, brought the painted ladies over for a photo with us as well. Kendra was already carrying a tray of Jell-O shots, and she nervously offered them to us. Bridget, Hef, and I happily took one each as the mean girls just ignored her with icy coldness. Hef wasted no time inviting the painted ladies up to his bedroom. Nicole was physically the least Hef's type, with her curvier body and strawberry blonde hair, so I knew right away that she wasn't making the cut, despite her participation in the sack. Tiffany was the only one who wasn't willing to go all the way. Good for her. I'm loving Tiffany so much, because I don't think that I would be able to either. Must be a Tiffany thing. So even though I really liked her, I knew she wasn't going to be invited back. Through the process of elimination, the 19-year-old platinum blonde from San Diego was in position to be Hugh Hefner's next girlfriend, if she played her cards right. In Kendra's book, Sliding into Home, she describes Hef asking her to be a girlfriend and handing her a house key before he invited her up to the bedroom. Now, I don't know if Kendra is trying to sound extra desirable, innocent, or if her memory is just super rusty. But of course, that's not how it really went down. Hef isn't stupid. He never asked anyone to become a girlfriend before they joined him in bed, and he never made a habit of carrying around extra sets of room keys. Because Kendra seemed pleasant, Bridget and I started encouraging Hef to ask her to move in. We openly and loudly chatted about how nice we thought she was. I don't know. She doesn't seem to have much personality, Hef responded. I rolled my eyes. Since when did he care about personality? Only a positive comment from Bridget or me could turn Hef off to this girl who was so clearly his type. Did I mention he hated it when his girlfriends got along? I could see what he meant, though. In the early days, Kendra wasn't the bubbly, bouncy loudmouth you may remember from the girls next door. Her personality could best be described as deer in the headlights. Understandable. I mean, she was fresh 19, so understandable. It was difficult to get a word out of her, and she seemed to have fried her brain somewhere along the course of her life. At the time, I just assumed she was shy or afraid of making a misstep while trying to navigate Hef's world. Despite his supposed reservations, he did continue to have her as a guest at the mansion. Kendra was still living in San Diego at the time, so Hef invited her to stay through a whole weekend and join us for the big Easter celebration that Sunday. Bridget and I had gone down to Melrose to pick out matching dresses for the festivities, including one for Kendra. I knew she didn't have a ton of clothes and was probably stressing out just like I used to. Usually, I wouldn't be so eager to dress like anybody's twin, but I knew how adorable Hef thought it was when the girls dressed alike. After nearly 3 years at the mansion, I was pretty attuned to Hef's preferences. I imagine him seeing the three of us together in matching outfits and thinking, oh, how cute. By getting Kendra to dress the part of a new girlfriend, I hoped it would help Hef make up his mind and set us apart from the mean girls who would most likely show up to the Easter event wearing jeans and bored looks on their faces. When we got back to the mansion, I went out to the room in the guest house where Kendra was staying, holding the new blue dress. I told her it was hers to wear if she wanted, and that Bridget was wearing a pink one and I had a pale orange version. Oh my God, girl, she said. I could see the relief on her face as a big toothy grin emerged. You have no idea. I was going nuts. She thanked me profusely. For the first time in a long time, I felt as though I could relax. I had a good feeling about this one. Just because Hef didn't want another Bridget or Holly didn't mean we couldn't all be friends. I wanted her to feel welcome. Realizing that the opportunity might soon present itself, Kendra began asking questions about life as a girlfriend as she changed into the dress. She had already hooked up with Hef, so that part was no mystery. Can I bring my dogs when I move in? I have to bring my dogs, she stated. I have 2 dogs. I need a really big room. I don't know what room you will get if you move in, I said. That's up to Hef. I have to admit, I envied Kendra's sense of entitlement. I had felt so lucky just to scrape by when I moved into the mansion, and here was a rookie who had just gone all the way with an old dude, and her only concern was how big her room was going to be. Though she wasn't as cunning or sophisticated as the other girlfriends who had inhabited the mansion in recent years, she seemed to have the same hustler mentality. Kendra was a stripper, but had told Hef she was a college student because the body painter gave her the heads up that Hef didn't like strippers and preferred college girls. When Hef put a caption under one of the first photos of her that entered his scrapbook, he referred to her as Hef's new sweetheart, a 19-year-old co-ed from San Diego. Co-ed. I need a car too if I'm gonna live here, she barked. I don't have one, and I want to get my teeth fixed. They are the only thing about me that I don't like. The balls on this girl, I thought. Oh, you'll have to talk to Hef about that, I responded, shrugging my shoulders. I barely had the nerve to ask for anything for myself. I certainly wasn't going to ask for her. The Easter ensembles worked. About a month after Hef's birthday, the mean girls were finally given the boot, and Kendra was officially asked to be a girlfriend. After 3 years of misery, which at the time I felt was largely due to those bullies, it was over. They were gone, and I'd never have to see or hear from them again. It didn't really feel real. I actually went down the hall and peeked into each of the former bedrooms to make sure they were really gone. What did you say to them? I asked Hef when he told me the girlfriends were leaving. I couldn't be certain that my prompting actually had anything to do with Hef's decision, but I silently congratulated myself either way. I told them that Kendra's moving in, and Kendra had confided to me that she used to have a drug problem, he said nonchalantly, thumbing through a file folder he had in his hand. Kendra told me they took her out to a club and offered her drugs. I told them I couldn't have that around her. Of course, I thought. I wasn't sure how they managed to sneak out of the house with Kendra, but according to her story, they did. If the story was true, the mean girls must have seen exactly what was happening and made a last-ditch effort to save their asses and sabotage Kendra's chances. Thankfully, it backfired. Kendra's arrival was the best news I had in a while. I was ecstatic to have those days of drama and backstabbing permanently behind me. Or so I thought. Just as he had done with me when I first arrived, Hef quickly made Kendra his golden girl. After all, she was the youngest and newest member of his harem. Immediately, Kendra acquired a black Escalade that she pimped out with rims, speakers, and every extra accessory possible. She also snagged the room she wanted, bedroom 2. It was the largest, most luxurious, and most plush of all the bedrooms, and she would instantly trash it. Kendra's room turned into a junk dump of possessions and reeked so badly of dog urine that you could smell it down the hall. I always tried to avoid staying in her room longer than a few minutes. Since the house was virtually empty, I decided to ask Hef if I could use bedroom 5 again so I could have more room for my things and a little privacy when I needed it. Living in the vanity made me feel on edge. Hef's secretaries were constantly in and out of there throughout the day, adjusting his calendar and wooden box full of pictures. I liked all of Hef's secretaries, but I would have liked a little solitude, too. Absolutely not, Hef squawked, setting down his reading glasses. Do you have any idea how much those rooms cost to rent? Actually, I did. Playboy Enterprises, a public company at the time, owned the mansion. Not Hef. In order to live there, he had to pay a monthly rent on every room he and his girlfriends occupied. People may find it surprising that Hugh Hefner is nothing more than a tenant renting his room at the mansion, but that's exactly how it is. And this is why I have said time and time again that these people are funded and financed. Hollywood and all of the celebrities are they're just financed. That's it. They don't actually have money that they can withdraw anytime and use it on whatever they want. But I'm going to just let the soapbox go. I'm going to get off of it for right now and continue with the book. At the time, he paid approximately $25,000 a month for the master suite, $12,000 a month for Kendra's room, and $10,000 a month for Bridget's room, bedroom 3. The 3 smaller rooms were priced between $5,000 and $7,000 a month. Should any of the rooms be vacant, Hef wouldn't be charged for them. So Kendra is worth $12,000 and I'm not even worth $5,000 was what I took away from the conversation. Since I lived in the vanity corner of Hef's closet, he didn't have to pay any rent on my account. Despite these little annoyances, things were actually going smoothly in the house between Bridget, Kendra, and me. To my great relief, Hef mentioned to his immediate circle that he was downsizing to just 3 girlfriends. Just when I thought this new quality over quantity arrangement might mean less drama, Hef decided to drop a bomb on all of us. During a Fun in the Sun pool party, Bridget and I were reading and sunning ourselves on side-by-side lounge chairs while Kendra sat on a floaty near the edge of the pool. As Hef shuffled along the flagstone walkway between us, carrying his backgammon board, he paused and looked around at each of us. You know, he began taking a swig from his bottle of Pepsi. I've decided I'm going to do a pictorial on the Painted Ladies featuring you and Tiffany. He nodded toward Kendra, but spoke loudly enough for us all to hear. Oh, wow, Kendra shouted, thanks. Pretending we didn't hear a word, Bridget and I kept our noses buried in whatever we were reading. We didn't know what to say. I just want to put my book down and leave, I said, defeatedly. He knows how badly you and I want to be in the magazine, and he just had to make that awkward announcement in front of us. I know, she sighed. We knew that Hef was trying to make us jealous and feel like shit, but I felt helpless, like there was nothing I could say. One particular day, Kendra appeared a little more somber than usual. Like all of us, she had her rough days, especially in the beginning, and we tried to coach her through, but that day she seemed really depressed. Bridget and I were desperate to win Kendra over and create the happy family we had always wished we had at the mansion. We're going out tonight, I declared, popping my head into her room. Immediately, Kendra's eyes lit up. Clearly, she needed a night away, even if only until 9 p.m. Hef was hosting his manly night at the mansion, which meant the girlfriends were required to make themselves scarce. Bridget and I thought it would be fun to take Kendra out for dinner. She was still new to Los Angeles, so we thought taking her out on the town would be just what she needed to lift her spirits. We decided on Nick's, a popular martini lounge in Beverly Hills, for appetizers and cocktails. When evening finally rolled around, Kendra seemed elated to be outside the mansion gates without Hef's parent-like supervision. Girl, do you think that there's anyone famous here? She sort of whispered in my general direction, craning her neck to see if she could spot a celebrity tucked into one of the restaurant's dark corners. Despite my attempts to befriend Kendra, she continued to push me away. Hungry for her own team, Kendra desperately tried to make each new playmate who arrived at the mansion her friend, and her friend alone. Kendra's plan rarely worked, though. Most of the new playmates were nice girls who were eager to get to know all the girlfriends. And let's face it, Kendra wasn't the easiest person to have a conversation with. When the new playmates would make an effort to spend time with Bridget or me, they were confused when Kendra suddenly lost interest in being their friend. A girl was not allowed to play both sides of the fence, so Kendra would toss her aside and find the next person to entertain her. And as is true with any caged animal, it was dangerous when Kendra grew bored. Her frustrations had been mounting for a while. She had been at the mansion for a few months, and Hef hadn't asked her to be a playmate yet. Even though she was well aware that Bridget and I had never been in the magazine, she thought she was somehow different, perhaps because of the painted lady pictorial she posed for in the September 2004 issue, and couldn't understand why she wasn't already on the cover. "I'm locked down," she would frequently say, referring to her new life behind the gates. It's no secret that Kendra was a pretty hardcore party girl before coming to the mansion. She battled drug addiction throughout her teenage years and eventually became a stripper to make extra cash. When Hef finally asked her to move into the mansion, Kendra thought she hit the jackpot. After all, wasn't Playboy all about excess, should I say? Money, parties, and sex. But as she quickly realized, those nights were fun and far between, and rarely as much fun as you'd think. The public's image of the freewheeling, leave your inhibitions at the door atmosphere of the Playboy Mansion was not a reality for any of Hugh Hefner's girlfriends. The atmosphere resembled the court of Versailles, which each guest obsessed with ranking and standing. There was even a hierarchy among Hef's friends when it came to seats at the dinner table. At 19 years old, Kendra was stuck with a 9 p.m. curfew, a 78-year-old boyfriend, and a stricter set of rules than she had ever had at home. And now, adding insult to injury, she was finally realizing that she wasn't as special as Hef made her believe. She was just another blonde girlfriend, and life at the mansion wasn't all she imagined it to be. Much like the battle I endured and ultimately lost years earlier, Kendra was desperately searching for an identity of her own. Being a clone was soul-sucking. You were simply another blonde number on Hef's arm. In the beginning, Kendra was very quiet. The raucous, deep-throated cackle that became her trademark on Girls Next Door was something she affected in order to stand out. I know I have no place to talk when it comes to annoying laughs, but with Kendra, it was clear that she was being as loud as possible in order to make sure every head in the room turned her way. I can just hear her laugh in my head right now as I'm reading this. It's just like on repeat. "Why is Kendra laughing like that?" one of the visiting playmates had asked me, unaccustomed to the new sound. "She's so annoying. If no one is paying attention to her, she just screams out of the blue." I shrugged my shoulders, hoping it was just a passing phase, but Kendra wouldn't shut it off until she was certain all eyes were on her. The laugh never did vanish, though. Even today, she still adopts that cackle. I bet by now, it's almost natural. Almost. Eventually, these sort of exaggerated antics became her trademark. For example, flying. She claimed to be so terrified of flying that she would put on a massive show in front of Hef during takeoff that resembled a loud, prolonged, frightened orgasm. It was embarrassing to witness. And wouldn't you know, when we were finally able to fly with Kendra on our own, read, without an audience of men for her to perform for, she was remarkably calm during the entire flight. Kendra had been living at the mansion for close to a year when my patience finally started to wear. We were all out at the nightclub for the moment. We were all at the nightclub of the moment in Hollywood with some potential playmates. Bridget and I flanked Hef in a corner booth while the other girls danced and partied around us. Always trying my best to be as attentive as possible, I remained seated next to Hef the whole night, drinking and watching the clock. Immediately, Kendra hoisted herself to the top of the banquet, surrounded by the playmate posse, all of whom were her BFFs on this particular evening. Kendra put on a show, dancing as provocatively and wildly as she could until she was certain every set of eyes in the nightclub were focused squarely on her. In all of her theatrics, Kendra didn't notice the large candles near her feet. One minute she was shaking her ass, and the next a cascade of hot wax was scorching down my leg. I jumped to my feet and began swiping at my thigh. Kendra took a brief moment to take in the situation before turning her attention back to the other playmates and letting out a long, loud laugh, not even taking a moment to apologize. Hef was oblivious to what had just happened, recognizing that something was wrong only when I stood up and started peeling the wax off my leg. He finally asked what had happened. Kendra dumped hot wax all over my leg, I said angrily. She knocked that candle over while she was dancing, looked right at me, and didn't even apologize. I'm sure she didn't mean it, Hef said, ignoring how upset I was, and turning his head back towards the crowd dancing in front of us. He decided it was time to leave a few minutes later. Thank God, I thought. I just wanted this night to be over so I could forget about this latest humiliation, just as I had tried to forget all the others I had experienced since joining the mansion fold. As we navigated our way through the sea of gawkers, we were stuck in an absolute traffic jam. Picture Hugh Hefner, roughly 10 girls, and a handful of security guards trying to push their way through this dark, tiny, crowded nightclub. It was a nightmare. Not only was I angry and irritated, but my skin was still burning from where the wax had landed. Kendra was bouncing along behind me, laughing and dancing with the other playmates as we made our way to the door. She must have sensed my irritation. How could she not? But still said nothing. Instead, as soon as our group stalled, she threw up her hands and screamed at me. "Move, bitch! Get out the way!" I whipped my head back around and screamed right back. "Shut up!" I yelled in her face. "You spilled hot wax on me. Don't say anything and then call me a bitch. Fuck you." Kendra's smile faded, and the playmates got quiet. I never lost my cool like that, so everyone knew I was seriously pissed. "What?" she said, her eyes like saucers and looking from side to side at the other girls, grasping for some kind of support. "It's a song." It hurt enough to have to be constantly humiliated by Hef, but now I had to take it from a 19-year-old bimbo who I had been nothing but welcoming to. I was losing my patience. When we finally made our way to the door, I turned to Hef. "She's totally inconsiderate," I grumbled. How could she not even say she was sorry? I gotta agree with Holly on this. A simple sorry would have gone a long way. Just apologizing and taking ownership of knocking that candle wax on her. Because I feel like if it went the other way around, Kendra probably also would have been really pissed. And probably even more if Holly didn't apologize. And since she was the main girlfriend, she would have had serious repercussions for not apologizing. Whereas Kendra does it and it's supposed to be just fine. I took my seat in the back of the limo, and much to my surprise, Hef finally opened his mouth. "You know, Kendra, you really should apologize to Holly," he said in a sort of fatherly, condescending tone. That's when the train went off the tracks. Kendra burst into tears, a hyperventilating, sobbing mess of tears. "You guys are my family," she wailed, reaching for a bottle of vodka from the limo bar. "I'd stick up for any of you guys no matter what." She pulled off the cap and started downing the vodka. The entire limo fell silent. In between swigs, she cried and blurted out some mumbo-jumbo through sobs that no one really understood. One of the girls tried to calm her down, but Kendra was either too drunk or too crazy to control herself. Hef, Bridget, and I fell silent before telling her that we would be there for her too. The whole display was shocking and kind of sad. It simply wasn't normal. It seemed as if Kendra, finally finding herself on Hef's bad side, broke down and retreated into a drunken fit. Like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum, she guzzled down the vodka in hopes that Hef would feel the urge to rescue her or care for her. It was both manipulative and incredibly sad. From that night forward, I was always a bit more cautious with Kendra. A woman who allows herself to enter into a situation like the one we were in must struggle with personal demons. I know I did. Kendra was harmless, sort of like an annoying kid sister. Our relationship would have its ups and downs over the next few years, but I learned to pick my battles and appreciate that she was just as damaged as the rest of us. She just had a different way of showing it. There wouldn't be time to focus on such things moving forward. Our lives were about to change, and the three of us would be further united on a brand new project. Like it or not. Chapter 8. We're all mad here. I'm mad, you're mad. How do you know I'm mad, said Alice. You must be, said the cat, or you wouldn't have come here. and that is from Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Off topic, but I love Alice in Wonderland, and when I have found out why Lewis Carroll actually wrote it and who Alice was to him, I'm more than creeped out. Just thought I'd share that. Back to the book, though. Would you say that Kendra is growing up at the mansion? Posed Jerica, the young, fresh-faced field producer sitting across from me. It was 2005, and we were in the mansion's game house filming my first set of one-on-one interviews for a new unscripted E-series spotlighting Hef, his 3 girlfriends, and our lives inside the mansion. The question completely caught me off guard. Don't get me wrong, I was excited at the prospect of doing a television show. Day-to-day life was so monotonous that I welcomed any sort of change, opportunity, or even the chance at fame I had once hoped for. But at the time, reality TV still had a pretty negative stigma. My time at the mansion hadn't been all that rosy, so I was anxious about what the show would entail. Naturally, this particular question set off a siren in my head. No, I wouldn't say that, I said, a bit more defensively than intended. It sounds gross and inappropriate. Besides, she's 20 years old. She's grown up already. It's not like we really had a choice when it came to doing the show. So all that anxiety was really for naught. Once Hef approved the idea, it was full steam ahead. No one even bothered to ask our opinions about filming the show. Even if it was just a courtesy, trophy girlfriends are better seen and not heard. But what did I expect? At the mansion, it was always Hef's way or the highway. We weren't given a choice in the nudity aspect of the show either. When the first season started filming, we weren't shy about being in front of the camera in various stages of undress. We knew everything would have to be blurred out in order to air on television, and the cameraman shot us from creative angles to avoid landing any nudity on the show. Halfway through the first season, though, someone must have realized that nudity could be shown in foreign television markets and on DVDs. So, getting as much nudity as possible on camera became a priority. No one ever consulted the 3 stars of the show when it came to this issue, and I wasn't aware of the change until after it had been put into effect. As intelligent as he is calculating, Hef saw the series as an opportunity to capitalize on the new genre of television that was sprouting up and once again reinvent the brand while bringing in a fresh audience to Playboy. And the needs of the brand always trumped those of the girlfriends. It was understood that if we chose to continue living at the mansion, we had to agree to be featured on the series. I've always been a private person despite my public life, so I was wary about the repercussions. Would Hef feel the need to bring in more girlfriends for ratings? Would the spotlight bring out our worst? Would producers try to stir up drama among the 3 of us? Jerica waited patiently for me to fill the silence, probably hoping I would break. After all, she is an adult, I said, rounding out my whole thought. I had shown up for the interview intending to look as wholesome as possible, wearing a pastel print button-up dress shirt, my hair pulled back into a ponytail with newly cut bangs, and very light, fresh face makeup. Despite my years of acting classes, I'd never watched myself on camera being myself. When we finally screened the first episode months later, I was absolutely horrified by my appearance. I looked so dour on camera, realizing that the corners of my mouth naturally turned down when I spoke. I looked washed out. Moving forward, I would take to caking on makeup like a beauty pageant contestant and grinning ear to ear for every interview. I feel like she's being really harsh on herself because in the first season, I didn't really notice any of these things that she's noticing, but then again, we are our own worst critics, so I get it. I also, it was weird for me when I first started making videos and like hearing myself and hearing my thoughts out loud. So I can't even imagine what it would be like to see yourself on reality TV. Yeah. Well, I just meant that she's young and sort of like the kid sister, Jerica continued calmly. The suggestive remark struck a chord with me for a few reasons. First off, I was only 26 years old myself at the time. Given the relationship I was in, I didn't really feel like age should matter. We were adults and free to date whomever we choose. Let's be honest, our dramatic age difference wasn't an uncommon question, but Jerica asked it in a way that made me feel like there were ulterior motives at play. Like she was using some sneaky backdoor approach to get me to say something I didn't intend to. If I say that, it makes it seem like he's a pedophile, and that's just gross, I said point blank. No sense beating around the bush. Second of all, I hadn't seen an episode pieced together yet and was still pretty untrusting of the process. Were they going to paint Hef as this villainous, predatory man? Part of me was still protective of him. Hindsight offers many luxuries, but in that moment, my view was still clouded by the fantasy that Hef was my boyfriend. The idea that one of his girlfriends is still growing up feels wrong, I explained, more politely than before, aware of all the eyes currently on me. Okay, fair enough, said Jerica. She continued to the next question, lobbing me a softball. What do you see life like 5 years from now? Mechanically, I jumped up into my spiel. In 5 years, I would love for it to just be me and Hef, I said, smiling and trailing off into my standard response. I was a part of Hugh Hefner's publicity machine and made sure that everything I said publicly was what I thought he would want me to say. Part of me wanted to please him, but mostly I was terrified of being reprimanded or losing favor by simply saying something he felt was off color or didn't paint him in the godliest of lights. This was hardly my first dalliance with press interviews, so I had most of the answers down pat. I think the growing up question struck a nerve even deeper than I cared to admit. Frankly speaking, I've always been pretty uncomfortable by Hef's fascination with extremely young women. He was obsessed with women looking as young as humanly possible. Everything, absolutely everything about that skeeved me out. Jerica's needling pressed some button to cause all this subconscious crap to surface, but luckily, I was still tucked safely into my corner of denial and quickly repressed the thought. How do you feel about the 9 o'clock curfew? Jerica asked, resting her chin in her hand. People were always fascinated by the curfew. As I said, I was a homebody anyway, and little did outsiders know that the curfew is hardly the worst thing about mansion life. Like a robot, I happily went back to my Hef and Playboy-friendly responses, the hard questions dodged for the day. Though The Girls Next Door marked a sudden change in Bridget's, Kendra's, and my lives, the series wasn't created overnight. Throughout 2004 and early 2005, different entities had expressed interest in developing a Playboy Mansion reality show. At first, I paid no attention to the rumblings, thinking it would have nothing to do with me. The idea that we were being thrown around didn't center on the girlfriends. Ideas surfaced like growing up Hefner, what life is like as Hugh Hefner's son, or upstairs, downstairs, the butlers of the Playboy Mansion. I'm running out of time, and I hope to see you on the next part.